For many decades, women have struggled for equality in the workplace. According to some estimates, there was a 21% pay gap in the United States in 2014, with full-time female employees earning only 79 cents for every dollar a full-time male employee earned. The pay gap is even greater between men and women professional soccer players. The USA men's team took home $8 million in the last World Cup for being in the top 16. Meanwhile, in 2015, the USA women's team took home $2 million for winning the entire World Cup. By contrast, the winner of the Men's World Cup in 2014, the Germans, earned $35 million in prize money. The winning women's team earned 6 cents for every dollar awarded to the winning men's team, even with excluding the impact of inflation. We see that there is a huge gap between the men and the women, so the question ultimately becomes whether such a disparity is fair. The simple and convenient answer is that market forces of supply and demand compel us to conclude that it is fair. More people prefer and are willing to pay to see men play, we are told. This alleged truism results in higher TV and other media advertising revenues for men's soccer, as well as higher jersey and other merchandise sales. Higher interest and willingness to financially support such interests presumably results in higher pay for men's soccer players. On the surface level, gender pay disparity can be explained by the fact that women bear children and men do not. However, public policy and societal choices can also inform the analysis. In the case of soccer, I believe that many countries have not fully embraced, through public policy and financial resources, the positive externalities of women's sports to the extent that pay disparity would substantially shrink over time. In college soccer, for example, using legislation and government initiative such as Title IX to level the playing field between men and women was very successful. Despite the positive results caused by government legislation such as Title IX at the women's soccer collegiate level, there have not been ample efforts to achieve equality at the professional level. For example, the DC Women's Pro Team plays games 40 miles from DC in a small stadium, while the men's DC Pro Team plays games at RFK Stadium, which has its own metro stop, making it much easier to have more ticket sales. If the government decided to jumpstart professional women's soccer and use taxpayers' money to create a women's stadium in DC that is more accessible to fans, it is very likely that there would be an increase in attendance at the women's games and thus an increase in revenue for the women's team. In addition to government legislation, if FIFA were to demand higher or equivalent prices for women from TV broadcasters as they do for men, there is a greater potential for the women's games to gain as much support and revenue, disregarding the convenient explanation of market forces. Many countries, including the United States, have not made concerted efforts to jumpstart women's sports through public policy and financial resources. Market forces are a viable explanation for the huge gender pay disparity only if women's sports are given an equal opportunity to create revenue for their teams.
Created using Powtoon.